What's up, ladies? Today I wanted to share some tips and tricks if you're over 35, you're trying to recover from burnout, trying to maintain weight or maybe even lose weight. Here are some of the tips and tricks that I wish someone had taught me before things went haywire. So we know that cortisol has received a really bad name. But cortisol is a survival hormone. Like, we need it to survive. We need it to function. And cortisol does have some incredible uses. And so I don't want everyone to be like, no cortisol, gotta stunt it, it's bad. That would not be a good idea for you. So we do know that by the age of 27, our immune system quits modulating properly. This means that itises start to kick in. So like the immune system basically can't differentiate between a true threat and a perceived threat because the filter is getting clogged and inflammation starts to peak. And by the time we're 35, this starts to correlate with cortisol, right? So now life has ganged up on us. Things have gotten harder. We're not unpacking as well anymore. And now cortisol and inflammation have this wonderful way of feeding off each other. And so until we disrupt this, things just continue to go haywire. And we know that there's two things that can happen. So you can either run really high cortisol, which is fight or flight, sympathetic dominance, never sleeping, tired but wired, or there's other people like myself who might go there for a couple of months before the adrenals are like, nah, we're not doing this, and then they go low cortisol. Either scenario is not good because what happens is you end up with an HPA dysregulation, which then lends itself to things like pregnenolone steal, where now your sex hormones are now being siphoned in a way that they weren't before. And this is where the symptoms or the fake symptoms of perimenopause tend to kick in, when for the majority of us, we're not there yet. We're not in perimenopause. It's just that we have this dysregulation that needs to be reset. So let's talk about fasting for a second. Fasting for women who have metabolic dysfunction. So if you have diabetes, pre-diabetes, insulin resistance is a fine line, or PCOS. These women do great fasting. This is amazing. This will absolutely help their hormones recalibrate. If you don't fall into one of those categories, and if you have low blood sugar or run low blood sugar, fasting is a major detriment to you because fasting is going to then kick up more cortisol as a result of trying to compensate for all that low blood sugar. So do not experiment with fasting if you fall into the category. Like if your cycles are good and you're good and you, like I said, your blood sugars are more or less stable, you've never had PCOS in your life, you're not pre-diabetic or diabetic, don't mess with fasting. You can do it, but it's really, there are better ways. So when it comes to your workouts, it's really important that you calm down afterwards, right? So whether you're doing HIIT or lifting weights, before you get in your car to go pick up the kids, run errands, go home, cook dinner, take 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and just walk. Do something to bring your nervous system back down to baseline. In the yoga tradition, this is why they take rest at the end of practice. It's to bring the nervous system back down before you go jump into the rest of your day. This is super, super, super critical to maintaining a healthy nervous system, especially as we get older. So we've all heard that it's really essential to get your protein in, and I agree, especially if you're trying to build muscle. But don't forget the carbs and don't forget the fat. So first of all, did you know that carbohydrates actually counteract cortisol? So if cortisol is running high, one of the things that you can do to stabilize that blood sugar and bring cortisol down is eat carbohydrates. And when we are low carb, we're not getting enough carb, especially if we're working out really hard, the adrenal has to work extra hard. And what are we trying to combat right now? HPA dysfunction, pregnenolone steal, hormone dysregulation, and an overworked adrenal, right? So getting good amount of carbohydrate is critical. Good carbohydrate, right? I mean, obviously don't be eating cookies all day long, but get good carbs in. And don't forget the fat. As women over 35, like if we want to produce our sex hormones, we need fat. That's how they are made, is cholesterol. So don't forget the fat. And no, you're not crazy if you turn 35, 37, 40, whatever, and all of a sudden you're like, can't lose weight, starting to gain weight. Cortisol and insulin, they have this interesting relationship, right? And if there's too much cortisol going around, cortisol will actually block insulin from getting into the cell. What this means is that all that insulin then has to go somewhere, and that's how we end up with excess fat. It's because insulin is not getting into the cell the way it's supposed to. We are no longer insulin sensitive. We are now developing insulin resistance and starting to get a little bit fluffier. Okay, so that's why it's important, if you're trying to get in shape over 35, to take a look at your stress and managing your stress and recalibrating hormonally, so that way your body can work optimally. So when it comes to combating insulin, when I was younger, I loved keto. I was an extreme yogi, and I wanted to keep the tension out of my body, and so I kept the insulin at bay as much as I could, because insulin and inflammation have a wonderful relationship to each other that's not necessarily helpful. So keeping insulin low is definitely something that we want to do. Now, most people will say, okay, eat fiber, that keeps insulin low, or go low carb, that keeps it low as well. But honestly, for me, and as women over 35, the best way to combat insulin and to use it to your advantage is to lift. Nothing will suck up that sugar better than your muscle fibers. So if you really want to get back to that place where you're like, oh, I used to be able to eat whatever I wanted, start lifting, because that's how you're going to get there. Nothing will retrain your body better than picking up some weights and building some muscle mass. I also want to note that if you are someone who liked experimenting with keto, do not practice keto while lifting, and especially while lifting heavy, because they don't go together. Like when you're lifting, I'm telling you, your body wants the carbs. That process of converting glucose into glycogen for the purpose of muscles is so essential. And so if you are going to take on a practice of weightlifting, especially heavy lifting, don't skip out on the carbs. Make sure that you get enough to sustain your energy reserves. One thing I wish that someone would have just said to me point blank when I was younger is stop focusing on the fat. When you're constantly focusing on the fat loss, it makes it actually harder to get to the goal. But if you focus on the muscle build, the fat loss will happen automatically, right? And it actually happens faster. So there's like a push-pull kind of power struggle that happens when we're focusing exclusively on fat loss. But if you're really committed to building that muscle, you kill two birds with one stone. And like I said before, cortisol is not the enemy. We don't want to blunt it from our system. If we don't have a normal cortisol response and our blood sugar runs low, we actually can run into some problems, some hypoglycemic problems. So making sure that cortisol is working properly is really critical. I know that like ashwagandha has a big name right now. Like I don't do ashwagandha because it just numbs me. It stunts, it blunts that cortisol response, which quite frankly isn't good for my blood sugar and isn't good for me. I like to be able to respond the way I want to, and to know that like I'm in control of the pause and not just numbed out. Ashwagandha long term isn't even good for you anyway. It's terrible for your liver. So learning how to recalibrate the body in other ways is really critical. Make sure you're getting your trace minerals. Make sure you're getting all your B vitamins. Make sure you're getting adequate A, D, and E. And if you need a little bit of help, maybe some, rhodiola or shishandra, but I definitely don't think that ashwagandha is the best, especially not long term. I know it's really popular right now, but if you can get away with just training your body, ultimately that's what's going to be the best. And I promise you, you'll get back to sleeping great, feeling great, losing weight, and feeling like yourself again. So anyway, for more like this, please like, share, and follow, because this is what I do.